Refraction, or the bending of light, requires different explanations between relativity, quantum mechanics, and even optical theory. How is optical refraction explained? Why does a pencil look shifted over in a glass of water? Because the light wave has a different speed through the different mediums. It moves at a different speed through water than it does through the air, and that's what creates that effect. How is this explained in special relativity? It uses the Sagnac effect, which comes from 1913, after special relativity in 1905. And then the logic is used to capture it, essentially. And to sum it up, it describes how light behaves bouncing off a moving mirror in rotation. So that's what GPS satellites use. But this principle violates special relativity because they use the ground speed of the satellite, how fast that satellite is moving relative to the surface of the Earth. That's not special relativity. That's an absolute framework against a third location, which is the center of the Earth. Special relativity is the relative movement between two observers. That's 2 points. That's the change in distance over the change in time between those 2 points. That's the speed. So when you talk about satellites, the point wouldn't be the center of the Earth or the Earth's surface itself. The point would be the receiver. It would be the antenna. It would be the transmitter. It would be whatever you're using. It doesn't work within special relativity. It only works within an etheric model. And then general relativity. How is the bending of light explained as it goes around the sun? Time. That's what we said. We said time. But we use light to measure time. So it's a circular definition. Wouldn't it make sense if that's also conditions of the medium, that space isn't empty and that's what's happening? It's flowing around the sun and the light is following through the path of the medium. Reflection and refraction, how are they explained in relativity and quantum mechanics, and would they make sense in an etheric model? What does Einstein say about it? Einstein says that Maxwell's wave equations will likely never be replaced for optical theory. So when we're talking about things we actually see and observe, we're talking about an etheric theory. Maxwell's equations are based on a static, still ether, a medium for that light to go through. This is before space-time was a thing. And remember, Einstein doesn't come up with space-time. Space-time was Hermann Minkowski, Einstein's math teacher's idea, before Einstein was even hired as a junior teacher, whatever they called it. Now, what are waves? Like, waves in the ocean are not their own thing. You don't just have the wave absent the ocean. You need the water too. It's a description of energy flow through the water and how it behaves. But you can't, if you took away the water, there would be no wave. You see what I'm saying? And this is where you get to ether. Essentially, these observations prove an ether. I mean, you get to lasers. There's lasers that can melt through a tree at 500 yards. I mean, who knows what else, you know what I'm saying? But there's lasers that we know can melt through. I saw a video on YouTube. Guy melted through fire brick at like 100 yards. Okay, non-physical medium, electromagnetic wave moving relative to this through empty nothingness can have an interaction with physical what? And then how is it explained through general relativity? You just substitute in time. But we measure time with light. We measure distance with light. All of our standard units are based on these assumptions surrounding light. How did we measure the light? How do we measure light speed in a vacuum? We bounce it off a mirror. It's the two-way. In theory, if Einstein's theories are true, the way they're currently described, you can never actually measure the speed of light, the one-way speed of light. It's impossible because each of the observers has their own universe and clock, and there is no simultaneity, and things don't actually occur at the same time, and my universe isn't yours. It's wackadoo, and you can see it's the same pattern of deception. You just put back in a physical medium that's still relative to observers. If you're a leaf on a river, and there's another leaf in a different section of the river that's moving at a different speed, observer A, observer B, you would both measure very little speed of water. You're being carried with it. But you're flowing at different speeds. However, when you frame it, you go, okay, the medium is still next to me. Like sound bounces, water bounces, all of these things, but they actually exist. You see what I'm saying? This whole notion of empty space makes no sense. The Michelson-Morley hypothesis was based on Maxwell's equations and theorized an absolute luminiferous ether, a still background frame through which all matter was moving. Therefore, when they go to measure the differences in speed of light in different directions as the Earth is moving through this absolute reference frame, The differences in speed of light that they measure should be Earth's absolute movement. And what were the results? Not positive. Who's the best? They weren't zero results. They did measure differences in speed, but they were so much less than theorized that they were attributed to experimental error. But in that paper from 1887, the authors make recommendations for future experimenters on how to achieve better results. Albert Michelson would go to his grave in the 1930s still believing that the ether was real, that luminiferous ether was not ruled out as a result of this experiment. Earlier experiments in the 1800s, the Fizeau experiment, suggested a partially entrained ether, and the results of that experiment are from which Lorentz develops his Lorentz transformation in an ether theory. Einstein says he independently came up with the same math and gives the name to Lorentz as a node. But remember all of this too. Einstein graduates college, teaching degree, math, physics, 1900. Can't get a job as a teacher. 1902, Olympia Club, great. Gets a job at the patent office because his buddy's dad hooked him up. Then 1905, miracle year. Boom. Still can't get hired as a teacher. 1907, Einstein's still not a teacher. Minkowski comes out with space-time. 1908, Einstein gets hired as a junior teacher. 1911, Einstein makes his first prediction of what would become general relativity and how stellar aberration, how much light from a distant star is going to bend around the sun during a lunar eclipse or solar eclipse. And his first prediction aligns perfectly with Newtonian physics and a prediction that was made by a different German physicist 100 years prior. Crew set out to test this prediction in 1914. Can't get measurements, too cloudy. Had they gotten measurements, they would have disproved Einstein's theory. 1915, Einstein doubles his value in what we know today as general relativity. 1919, the Eddington experiment confirms general relativity, but they had to use backup lenses. I've done deep dives on the whole story. It's circumstantial at best. And then the person who, when Einstein is announced in the US basically for the first time, the person quoted on the, I don't know if it's front page, but quoted in the New York Times, Sir Oliver Lodge wrote extensively about the ether and how the ether was the spiritual realm and how the disciples saw Christ's etheric body rise and how he was contacting his son from World War I. These books were published before he was selected to give that quote. The theory doesn't really become accepted until into the 1930s. Einstein divorces the mother of his children, of his 3 children, to marry his cousin, first cousin on mom's side, second cousin on dad's side. His son, schizophrenic son, he never sees after he comes to the U.S. in the 1930s. He lives out the rest of his life in a Swiss insane asylum. Einstein's offered the presidency of Israel in 1952 and declines it, citing he doesn't have the aptitude for it. I'd say there's room in there maybe for discussion. Water waves and sound waves are considered mechanical because the medium through which they move is considered real and physical. And light waves are considered non-mechanical because the medium through which they move is considered imaginary and virtual. The electromagnetic spectrum, what is it? The electromagnetic field, what is it made of? Nothing. It's made of itself through empty space. And why is a photon considered the 0 point of mass? Because it's a wave through the unentrained ether. And that ether is entrained at the atomic level with different densities that we can represent with mass. And that gravity is not the curvature of space-time, but again, these densities and how everything interacts. There's a lot to be learned. There's a lot of additional layers. I'm not claiming to have all of them, but this is definitely where we made a mistake by thinking everything is empty nothingness. And interestingly enough, sound is a longitudinal wave, light is a transverse wave, and water is a combination of the two. How could photons experience no time and yet still exist in reality? From a photon's perspective, maintaining light speed according to relativity, the photon would never experience any time or distance. So how would it lose energy over time? This is where we get the expanding model of the universe, because we say, since there's nothing in space for it to lose this energy to, time itself must be stretching it. Time itself must be taking the energy. We don't know what time is. And then when you try to calculate the energy, so you can know the energy lost of a photon, it's E equals hf. Planck's constant, h, is a derived number. It wasn't a calculated and then confirmed number. It was a derived number to match equations. And then the frequency, you need the wave. You can't, that's where the wave-particle duality comes in, is because you can't have a particle without the wave, but a wave of what, again? Relativity makes it such that each observer, which is literally every particle in the universe, has its own, it doesn't make any sense. And I bring up the brick. I didn't do a good job explaining this, but I bring up the brick because it's like, how can a wave of nothing, experiencing no time from its perspective, blast a hole in a fire brick at 100 yards away, or travel trillions of light years through space? You know what I'm saying? How could light do all of these things, be made of nothing? I call it ether with an E because in Einstein's papers, it's translated from German into English as E with an ether, but it doesn't matter. Aether, ether, prana-chi, whatever you want to call it, plasma, all these different, is the universe conscious? Like, all of these questions bake right into it when you stop considering it empty and relative, but rather absolute, real, and flowing. Relativity and quantum field theory are not just phases, they are systematic perversions of the truth, all designed in the same way. It's the same. By calling them phases and thinking of them as innocent mistakes, the best answers at the time, ignores the pattern that is present in all of these different disciplines. And you can see all of these different scientific disciplines segregated from each other to compartmentalize. They use different verbiage, different concepts, and it's the same thing. You see the same pattern with Columbus that you do with Einstein, that you do with Jesus, and we're ignoring it. It's got Freemason all over it. It's got whatever's behind that. There's more. There's so many more layers, and it's just, you know, Shrek tells you got to peel them back. It's all designed to take you away from God. Now, God, I'm using it as a general term. However you want to define it is totally cool. That's different conversation on this one, okay? But they're systematically changing the definitions and making people argue over those definitions in all of these different places. And the science, the physics, is to draw an atheistic conclusion. Empty space. Everything is literally nothing. Holographic universe winning Nobel Prizes and what, like virtual this, it makes no sense because it's all founded on these simple false human rules. We go, these are the laws of physics, and it's like, well, and we have there's absolutely no changing that. The speed of light, like, it's all nonsensical, but pointed in the same direction. Special relativity in 1905 is not special relativity today. Einstein's paper on the electrodynamics of moving bodies makes a clear distinction between emitting and observing bodies. Very important, because when a photon is emitted from the emitting body, Einstein's now relative physics loses that distinction and makes both emitter and observer potential observers, and now comes up with a model mathematically in which this emitting body's movement stays tied to that photon, and this observing body's movement stays tied to that photon by giving everyone their own. There's no absolute space. There's no shared reality. It's garbage. Michelson-Morley didn't disprove anything other than that particular model of an etheric universe, a static ether where everything is like Swiss cheese moving through, and the wind that we would detect on the Earth's surface would be equal to Earth's absolute movement through this space. That we would feel the wind on the surface of the Earth or below, because they were in a basement, equal to Earth's rotational speed. Why would, no, the air and the ether is moving with and around. And the flat is part of the propaganda. The flat gets financially backed and made popular and boosted within algorithms because it's a intelligent question and a wrong answer. See, that's when we talk about controlled opposition. This is the majority of it. Very few people, I think, are handed a script and told, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. You go into a room of 100 people, you ask a question. Somebody gives the right answer. Okay, thanks. Somebody gives the wrong answer with dumb logic. Nah. Somebody gives the wrong answer with intelligent logic. Boom. That's my man. That's who I want. He's going to be able to outsmart most of the people and convince them that the person more intelligent than them is actually less intelligent than them and jack everything up. You know, the weirdest part of this pattern recognition super ability is being able to see that nobody's going to believe me until something bad happens to me. You go, why not? But we have this weird and baked concept from propaganda, probably, or realist, I don't know, that if somebody was that smart, that intelligent, able to uncover that many things, that the evil entities would find them first and do something bad to them. That there's no way I would hear about it before them. So anybody that I hear from must be a Fed, must be controlled opposition, must be working for them. But that's, you know, A lot of them are. I don't know. But this is the propaganda. This is how it works. Turns brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor. Can't tell right from wrong, upside from down. And that's when you talk about the Messiah that's trying to be brought about, it's the end. They make you want the end, and then you bring about the end. They give you what you want. That's the whole thing is in this cycle. They think that their role is the Omega. They need to bring about the end as quickly, fastly as possible to do you a favor because that's what you really want. So they make you want it. They force you into those decisions. They confront you with the information, and then you get to pick. The record, these videos that I just covered in the last hour on Smedley Butler, Einstein, and World's Fairs are from memory. Like, it's a curse. This isn't fun. I'm not trying to brag. I'm trying to use the gift that I was given in a positive way. And again, happy to be wrong. Would love to be wrong. I just haven't heard anybody with a more thought out explanation than I've been offering between religion, science, politics, etc. You know, the weirdest part of this pattern recognition super ability is being able to see that nobody's going to believe me until something bad happens to me. You go, why not? But we have this weird and baked concept from propaganda, probably, or realist, I don't know, that if somebody was that smart, that intelligent, able to uncover that many things, that the evil entities would find them first and do something bad to them. That there's no way I would hear about it before them. So anybody that I hear from must be a Fed, must be controlled opposition, must be working for them. But that's, you know, a lot of them are. I don't know. But this is the propaganda. This is how it works. Turns brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor. Can't tell right from wrong, upside from down. And that's when you talk about the Messiah that's trying to be brought about, it's the end. They make you want the end, and then you bring about the end. They give you what you want. That's the whole thing is in this cycle. They think that their role is the Omega. They need to bring about the end as quickly, fastly as possible to do you a favor because that's what you really want. So they make you want it. They force you into those decisions. They confront you with the information, and then you get to pick. The record, these videos that I just covered in the last hour on Smedley Butler, Einstein, and World's Fairs are from memory. Like, it's a curse. This isn't fun. I'm not trying to brag. I'm trying to use the gift that I was given in a positive way. And again, happy to be wrong. Would love to be wrong. I just haven't heard anybody with a more thought out explanation than I've been offering between religion, science, politics, etc.